If you find yourself talking a lot about the features of your product or service, you're making it harder to close. For 13 years, I've worked in B2B sales and closed over 8 figures in revenue. And what I noticed in that time is that every single B2B buying decision, no matter what the industry, can be reduced to just 4 motivations. And if your messaging doesn't clearly hit one of them, buyers won't feel urgency. And when they don't feel urgency, they don't buy. Most founders think that B2B companies purchase based on product capabilities, service scope, technical differentiators, or company level problems. They don't. Because behind every company is a person who makes the buying decision. See, people use features to justify their decisions, but they make the decision itself based on outcomes. And those outcomes fall into just 4 categories that we'll go over now. So think of them as 4 aces in a deck of cards. Every deal you've ever closed will fit into one of these. You've got clubs, clock, time, diamonds, wealth, money, don't dig your own grave with a spade, de-risk, and have your finger on the pulse with a heart, status. So let's focus on time for now, the ace of clubs. It is quite literally the most important asset that we have because unlike money, you can't make any more of it. So when you have solutions that will allow you to move faster or save people having to do things, time can really be a huge deciding factor for a lot of B2B buyers. For example, if you're a consultant, don't say we provide strategic advisory services. Say that we compress 12 months of trial and error into 90 days. That's time, and speed creates urgency. Next up, we got the ace of spades. So the second reason that businesses will pay a premium is to de-risk themselves so they can avoid digging their own grave, hence the spade. For these types of businesses, you're going to want to position your solution as something that will help them avoid catastrophe, protect their reputation, avoid regulatory issues, and prevent board-level embarrassment if you're a larger company. So for example, if you provide cybersecurity insurance, don't talk about your advanced threat detection software. Say that your board never has to answer for a breach. That's risk. Risk reduction is really powerful, and here's the mistake that most founders make. They assume that this is the only motivation when it's not. So this comes particularly into the fray with businesses, for example, insurance brokers, and people where the product isn't so much creating value, but protecting companies from harm. And I'll talk a bit about why that's important to remember in a second. Next up, the ace of diamonds, money. It's what we all get into business for, but it's often really poorly communicated. So a business will either pay a premium to increase their revenue or reduce their costs, because both of those things will help increase profit margin. So instead of saying our SaaS platform improves workflow, you can say something like we reduce customer acquisition by 27%. Because if you're a larger business, you will track those numbers, and customer acquisition cost is one of the biggest levers that you can pull in terms of improving your profitability. Because if you can make it as cheap as possible to acquire a customer, it means that you will make more revenue and more profit in the long run. And finally, this is a uniquely human one, the ace of hearts, finger on the pulse, status. This is, I think, one of the most underrated motivations to buy. And businesses will often make purchase decisions not necessarily based on cost, but because of what that purchase will mean in terms of their competence, their modernity, their leadership, and their authority to the world around them. And equally, sometimes the buyer might want to protect their own internal status within a company. So if you are, say, for example, offering an AI solution that would make administrative roles redundant or encroach on the role of someone who's senior, that may impact your ability to sell. Now, an example here is if you're a marketing agency or a marketing consulting firm, oftentimes your buyer may not actually care about your ability to generate ROI, but more so they will care about the fact that you work with other market leaders in their field. That's status. It helps them to look smart. So never underestimate the power of selling to status. Now, here's where this becomes really powerful. You need your marketing collateral to touch on all four of these areas in some way, shape, or form when you're speaking at the macro level, because you never know who's going to be considering you. But when you're speaking to the decision maker in a one-on-one sales environment, you need to be able to pick up on what they care about most and focus the spotlight into. So we'll talk about this in a second here, but it's really important that you don't cross streams on your messaging with a particular type of buyer. Let's use the marketing services analogy. On a company level, marketing's function is to help businesses make more money. And I'm going to use an example from my own business here. We do a lot of video production for B2B businesses, specifically creating podcasts. Now, the whole idea of when you set the podcast up right, it can actually help drive revenue for the business. It helps with conversions. That's generally what all content tends to do. But I remember one of my clients in the early days, they were an accounting firm. They hated the idea of having to make content, but they knew that it was important for generating revenue. So if I focused on this, most people would have forgiven me. Obviously, we're going to help you generate more revenue. But as I spoke more and more to the partners, I realized all of them were fathers with young kids. And the real problem they had, and the reason why they wanted to work with an external partner, was the time factor. They didn't want to have to spend more time than they had to creating content or managing it in-house. Now, had I just focused on our ability to generate revenue with the podcast, I would have missed out on my ability to close that sale, because I was able to pick up on the fact that, yes, we will help you convert more clients, but ultimately it's very much you just rock up. We've done all the work for you. You speak to the camera, you go back home to the kids, and we'll take care of everything else. We'll take care of the editing, the distribution. So that's an example of where you need to think about the buyer first, rather than just what you think the company level needs. Another example using the marketing analogy, even though you wouldn't think of marketing as being related to risk like insurance, when you're dealing in 2026 with AI and its impacts on reputation for those businesses who use it in their marketing, this can also be a factor in a buyer who cares a lot about risk and compliance. So for those types of people, you want to focus on case studies and the guarantees that you can provide that will help them to de-risk in their marketing. And lastly, people care about status. Not everyone cares about it the most, but if you're speaking to someone and you find that they're mentioning their competitors a lot, saying what they're doing well and not so well, perhaps they're dressed to the nines in designer gear, that's clearly a buyer who cares about their external perception a lot. So if you try to sell anything else but that status, it won't be as effective. So if you can pick up on people who care about status, they're actually very easy people to close. You just have to give them plenty of examples of the kind of top tier people that you work with. And that tends to be my clients. They all have worked with some really awesome businesses in the past. And it's just a matter of teasing out what are those businesses that you want to be talking about, and how can we get those businesses to mirror the buyer that you're trying to sell to. And that's the crux of why most businesses struggle to sell. It's not because their product or their service is weak, but it's because they're using the wrong ace to the wrong person. They talk a lot about what they do and how they go about it, but they're not anchoring to the outcome that is most sought after. Time, money, risk, status. And if your buyer has to translate your messaging into one of those four things themselves, they won't. So before your next sales call, ask yourself this: which ace does this buyer care about most? Before writing your next landing page, ask yourself, which ace am I clearly communicating here with this headline? And if you can't answer that in one sentence, you're selling features. And if you want help refining your messaging so it hits the right ace for the right buyer, I host weekly calls inside our private school community. It's called the LinkedIn Founders Club. It's free to join, but we literally vet everyone who requests to join. So if you'd like to sign up, I'll leave the link below so you can check it out. Now, if you want to learn every single lesson I've picked up from 13 years of selling millions of dollars to B2B buyers, watch this video next. I break down those lessons so you can use them in your next sales call. See you there. Bye.